And I want to begin by saying a big thank you to Delara Uza for inviting me to participate in this conference. Delara and her team. I know it takes a lot of work to put these things together, and I want to say thanks and wish you all the success for the rest of the conference. So let's go on with my session. So this session is about engaging young people in physical activity through collaborative, cooperative, and non-competitive games. My name is Ken Black, currently an independent advisor on inclusive physical activity in sport. I'm also a trustee of the board at Limpower in the UK. That's the organisation that's concerned with supporting young people and adults who have limb impairments in sport and the arts. And I'm also co-director of the Inclusion Club, and I'll say a little bit more about the Inclusion Club at the end. So the format for this session is, I want to look at non-competitive games as opposed to competitive games, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. But then look at three groups of games: cooperative games, personal challenge games, and improvised games. And in those various categories, I want to show you some practical examples using some video. So let's get on with the session. Now, this is a quote from previous Prime Minister here in the UK. We need to end the all must have prizes culture and get children playing and enjoying competitive sports from a young age, linking them up with sports clubs so they can pursue their dreams. And this was really a philosophy that came in when this government came to power in 2010. It was a coalition government, and they wanted to undo a lot of the work that had gone on with previous governments and youth sport agencies in the UK who were trying to promote a more all-embracing, all-inclusive approach to school sport. David Cameron wanted to take it back to the old days of competition and cups and trophies. This is a very famous quote from Nelson Mandela: "Sport is a power to change the world." Very important statement, not just for his country, but for for everyone around the world. The fact that power is the power to inspire, to unite. But I guess he was thinking in sport in a much broader way, and he associated himself with sporting events like the Rugby World Cup, the Football World Cup, and using sport to try to bring together people who'd previously had differences and unify his own country. So sport does have this kind of power. And I think what I want to show is that it doesn't always have to be competitive sport that has the power to inspire or to unite. And here's going even further back, Franklin D. Roosevelt, former president of the United States, he said, competition has been shown to be useful up to a certain point and no further. But cooperation, which is the thing we must strive for today, begins where competition leaves off. Now, it could be interpreted he was really talking about international relations and business, but if we translate that into physical activity and sport, we're looking at competition having a certain meaning and a certain importance, but really non-competitive, collaborative and cooperative activity is what we really need to bring people together, bring young people together in every way. Non-competitive and competitive games. Let's look at some differences. Competitive games, you could say that there's always winners and losers. In a race, there's one winner and everyone else has lost. In a team sport, there's two teams, one wins, one loses. Unless, of course, It's the great English game of cricket, in which case people play for 5 days and nobody wins. But that aside, there's generally a winner and a loser. Whereas in non-competitive activity, you could argue that everyone wins. Everyone wins in the sense that everyone has been part of reaching the goal that the whole group is trying to attain. In competitive sport, skillful players tend to dominate. So in a team sport, for example, the good players, the skillful players will tend to dominate the activity more than those who are still developing their skills. And so they tend to have more of the ball in a ball game. They tend to have more time participating, whereas others who are still developing the skills may not participate so much. And in individual games, skillful players will always dominate players who are still developing their skills. In non-competitive sport, everyone is making a contribution. So even if that contribution is very small, in some kind of a collecting activity, some people may be very mobile and able to collect lots of objects, and others who whose mobility is inhibited in some way may only collect 1 or 2 objects. But in that activity, they've all contributed to the total objects that have been collected. So everyone has made a contribution. In competitive sport, you could look at it as being divisive because it divides the winners and the losers, those who feel superior to those whose abilities are still developing, those who feel good about themselves because they win, those who don't feel so great about themselves because they haven't won. In non-competitive sport, it has more of a unifying effect in that people are brought together. They're trying to move towards a common goal, and they work as one as opposed to against each other. Sport can be competitive sport tends to be confrontational, whereas non-competitive physical activity in sport is more collaborative and cooperative. The competitive sport, some players are undervalued. So if you go back to the old days when at school the teacher would appoint 2 team captains, and the team captains would select people from the group to be on their team. Who gets left to the end all the time when team captains are picking players alternately? The best players, the ones who are perceived as being the best players, are always picked first, and it leaves you then with the players who are less valued, who think, well, they're not so skillful, I don't want him on my team. Non-competitive sport is more about acceptance, and that everyone is a bit different and everyone is contributing in different ways. If we look at competitive, it's teamwork based on ability. Teamwork based on ability. People having roles perhaps within a game or within a team, and those can be quite specific. In non-competitive sport, it's teamwork based on respect. It's teamwork based on the fact that everyone is perhaps contributing in a different way, but that way is still important to the end result for the whole group. So we're going to look first at cooperative games, and the following activities I've mentioned already, they emphasize aspects like teamwork, cooperation, helping each other, and working towards a common goal. So we're going to look at cooperative games, and the following activities emphasize teamwork, as I've mentioned, cooperation, helping each other, and working towards a common goal. And I want to use a few video examples to illustrate these activities. The videos I'm going to show are all from clips that I've either made myself or produced for other organizations. This cooperative game is called Keepy Uppies, and as it sounds, The players, initially in a circle formation, are trying to keep a balloon in the air and then gradually adding more balloons, then faster moving balls as their skills develop. And then this can transition into something that looks a little bit more like volleyball, but the essential difference is that the players are trying to keep the ball alive, to try to get as many hits as possible before they lose control of the ball, rather than trying to score points. So it's all about working together. This game, Blanket Ball, is also loosely based upon volleyball. And it's really a way of young people working together. They have to synchronize their effort. They may have to appoint a leader who counts them into each movement, but they're trying to work together. Eventually, they can perhaps get into smaller groups and then try and transfer a ball from one group to another, and then finally introduce a barrier between the groups. So what are the takeaways from the cooperative games section? Well, we can look at how cooperative games encourage young people to work together to achieve success in the activity, to achieve success for the whole group. And cooperative games also recognize that every individual can make a contribution. So everyone, however small that contribution, it's important to the success of the whole group. And finally, cooperative games employ everyone's specific skills to support the group effort. So people may have skills in certain areas. They may be very good communicators, so they can explain things. They may be very good at specific physical activity. They may be very mobile, so they can do those parts of the activity, and other people do something less mobile. So everyone's making a contribution based on their specific skills. So in this section, we're going to look at personal challenge games. And these are based around individual and personal challenges that can be carried out in the school setting as part of school physical education or the extended physical education program. So within the school setting, or at home challenges. A lot of young people have had to spend a lot of time in the last year or so at home and away from school, but they can still be physically active. And these challenges can be a good way of engaging and motivating young people who are stuck at home. So we're going to look at one or two video examples of these. This is another volleyball-based game, and it's a cooperative game that uses very simple equipment, create some kind of a barrier. This could be done at home also, using an improvised barrier, and then targets, for instance, hoops or paper on the ground. And you can work with a partner to try and get the best score, allocate a score to each of the target areas. And you have a certain number of goes and then change places. And a young person can work on their own doing this, trying to score in the targets. You can adapt by using a tee, perhaps, or enabling the player to get much closer to the targets. This activity is based on track athletics for people who have vision impairment, and by using eye shades, you can enable young people to get an impression of these kind of activities designed for athletes who have vision impairment. So in pairs, the athletes move backwards and forwards and collect pieces of a jigsaw, which, once they've collected everything, they assemble. They can assist each other. The sighted person can assist the person who's wearing the eye shades, and then as a group, assemble the jigsaw to complete the challenge. For this game, use simple targets like a plastic hoop or sheets of paper. Start by just trying to hit the ball over a basic net like this rope. Then introduce a target, in this case, a garden table. Your control and coordination will improve with practice. As your skill increases, challenge yourself with more difficult targets. A balanced and stable position will be more successful. So challenges can enable young people to improve their skills and abilities, but in their own time and at their own pace. They can help young people to work together with one or two other people. It could be siblings at home to better a score or a time in a particular activity. And it enables them to continue to challenge themselves in the home environment, away from school, perhaps in situations where young people have to be at home because of what's going on in our world at the moment. So in this section, we're going to look at improvised games, this final section. And what this looks at is how we can use, particularly in the home environment, how we can use available space around the home or perhaps outside immediately outside the home. How we can adapt equipment using all available materials. And this could be just items that you find around the house that you can then repurpose. So non-sports equipment you can repurpose and use it in a sports or physical activity manner. So let's look at some video examples of improvised games. So this activity uses the space that you might have available, in this case, outside of the home in the garden area, where you can create a string trail just by attaching a string to various parts of the garden, things that you might be able to use like tree stumps or bird tables, fences, anything that you can utilize. And then once you've assembled the string trail, you can try and follow it around. You can create obstacles throughout the trail to make it a little bit more challenging. And you can also give yourself rewards. So for instance, hang some fruit somewhere along the line. If you want to make the trail more visible, then you can attach some paper flags. And if you want to make it really challenging, then try it with eye shades. Try and follow the string trail wearing eye shades. This game is part of a video that I made recently with the GB Paralympic athlete Kate Gray.
This activity is chair golf, and it's very similar to the game of golf that you may know, but it's something that you can set up in your home environment using items around the house. Now, all you're going to need is a couple of chairs that are going to be the holes that you're aiming to get your golf ball into. Rather than using hard golf balls, it's better to use slightly softer items. So I've just scrunched up a couple of pieces of paper, which I'm going to use as the golf ball to try and land on the chair. And also you might want to use some markers as a tee-off point. So I'm just using a can of beans to mark my tee-off point so that I know where to start from. Now you can set this up around the house in different rooms. What you want to do is place the chair in one area of the room, which will be the hole that you're trying to get the ball into. So you want the ball to land on top of the chair without falling off. And then you want to mark the tee-off point somewhere further away so that you've got to throw a good distance for the ball, or the paper ball in this case, to land on the chair. Now you want to do this in different rooms as well, setting it up so some areas could be slightly more challenging, some holes could be longer or shorter, you might have obstacles or furniture to manoeuvre around, and the way it works is you stand on the tee-off point or sit on the tee-off point, whichever you prefer, and you're going to throw rather than hit, because we're not using golf clubs in this case, we're going to be using our own bodies that we have, and you're going to throw the golf ball towards the chair to see if you can get it to land on the chair. It might be a hole-in-one and you'll get it to land on the chair first time round, or you may require a couple of extra throws to get closer and eventually reach the chair. It can be as challenging or as easy as you like, depending on how you set it up. Once you've achieved one hole, you can then move on to the next hole and see how you get on. You can do this on your own, competing against yourself, or you can compete against another person, a number of different people, to see who can get the ball onto the chair in the least amount of throws. So give it a go and see how you get on.
But you can play games based on volleyball at home too. Keepy uppy, as it sounds, is about keeping a ball, or in this case a balloon, in the air as long as possible. You can play from a seated or a standing position, whatever your preference. Play with a partner, perhaps a family member, or on your own. Use whatever is available: balloons, beach balls, any lightweight play ball, or make a large ball from scrunched up paper. Here's a great game I was shown by a colleague from the Netherlands, Lydia Seidel. All you need is some newspaper hung on a rope or string, and as many balls or paper balls or rolled up socks that you can use as throwing implements. You can play this game as an individual, trying to see how many points you can score for yourself, or you could work with a partner to try and see how many targets you can hit together, or you can play competitively, trying to score more points than your opponent. An important aspect of improvised games is to enable and encourage young people to develop their own rules, their own structures for the games. And they will often come up with surprising innovations and ideas. For this challenge, make some paper balls out of old newspapers and paint them different colours for each player. Also use some old plastic water bottles, which you can also colour. In an indoor or outdoor space, position the bottles to form a large circle. How many paper balls can you throw or roll into the circle? Keep trying until you can consistently get all the balls in the circle every time. Then you can move to the next part of the challenge. Make the circle smaller. Now see how many paper balls you can get into the circle. Again, keep trying until you can do this almost every time. Finally, make the circle even smaller for the ultimate challenge. Try different ways of throwing the paper balls: underarm, overarm, or a dart type throw. If you find it too easy, move further away. But be careful, this challenge can always catch you out. Most people don't have bocce balls at home, but it's easy to make a set with paper balls which you can colour using poster paints. Like similar target games such as bowls or pétanque, the idea of bocce is to get your coloured bocce balls closer to the white target ball than your opponent. Note that in bocce you don't take turns. The person who's furthest away continues to throw until they get closer or they run out of balls. It's a very flexible format. you can play against an opponent, or if there's enough people around, you can make up teams, or just play against yourself. You score a point for every ball closer to the target ball than your opponent. In this case, it would be 2 points to red. If the weather outside is bad, it's easy to move the game indoors. Just use whatever space is available. You can propel the ball by throwing or bowling it along the ground, or you can push it or kick it with your foot. Or you can improvise with a plastic pipe or cardboard chute. Like all great games, bocce is easy to understand, but always challenging. The following activities are based on the adapted game of New Age curling. New Age curling is based on the traditional Scottish winter game of ice curling. The modified curling stones can be used on any suitable flat surface. It's unlikely that you'll have access to this specialized equipment, but with a few adaptations, you can play New Age curling at home. For example, plastic jar lids can substitute as effective curling stones. On a smooth, flat surface like a tabletop, an adapted curling game can be created. A traditional target or house can be downloaded or simply drawn using markers or poster paint. Keep the lid in contact with the table surface or floor and slide it towards the target. The aim of the game is to get your stone as close to the center of the target as possible. You can propel the stone in lots of different ways, using your strongest hand, your non-preferred hand, pushing the stone with an implement like a plastic ruler, or where the grip is impaired or absent, a mitt like this oven glove can be very effective. The game can be played on any smooth surface like a vinyl floor. Some players may prefer to use a floor brush as a pusher. You can play competitively against an opponent or just try to improve your own performance. And finally, what about this fun way of making use of a clothes dryer in your garden? I think this is just one example of how you can take an everyday household item and turn it into an adapted activity. Improvised play is all about stimulating young people's creativity and imagination. So improvised games encourage young people to create their own games and activities in their home environment, or it could be in the school environment in their own time, but it encourages them to develop their own games and activities, perhaps based upon specific activities, based upon a racket sport or volleyball, but their own version that they can do in their home. They can make use of the readily available materials that they may find around the house and reuse those in a different way to help with the creation of the challenges. And it helps young people to be imaginative. They can create their own games, invent games. They can develop their own rules, which they use within these games. and they can use equipment in different ways. So improvised games are all about creativity, imagination, and helping young people to stay active out of school. So thank you very much for your attention. I think if there's any questions, you can direct these, any questions on this particular session, you can direct them via chat, and I can field them from there, or you can email them straight to me, Ken Black, ken@theinclusionclub.com. I'll try to respond to any questions that you have about what you've just seen. And just mentioning the Inclusion Club, don't forget to check it out. It's free to subscribe, and there's lots of information on there. The Inclusion Club was launched in 2011 at a very similar conference to this one, and by a colleague called Peter Downs, who's based in Australia, and myself. And this website, its web platform is still going. It's got lots of information on inclusive physical activity and sport, and beginning to explore wider aspects of inclusion. Check it out, and if you wanted a start point, I would suggest you look at the episodes. So go on, click on the episodes tab, and you'll see lots of video-based stories that are very easy to follow, and that might be a good start point for you at the Inclusion Club. Anyway, check it out, www.theinclusionclub.com. Thanks again for your time, and enjoy the rest of the conference.